Leonard Fournette is apparently unhappy with the way some people are speaking about him and his weight gain that he had during the offseason workouts. And we find out which defensive players Evan Klosky has on his radar ahead of training camp. Let's go.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. I am James Yarcho, joined by my Wednesday co-host, Evan Klosky of Penn Tampa Bay. Of course, you can check out all of my written work over at SBNationsBucksNation.com. And make sure you follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JArco_Bucs, and at eKlosky, WTSP. Again, we'd like to thank you for making the Locked On Bucs podcast your first listen or view of the day. Evan, Leonard Fournette suffered some criticism earlier this offseason for being a little out of shape during the OTAs, little on the heavy side. And David and I have been on record saying by the time training camp rolls around, he's going to be right back to being his normal Lombardi Lenny self, ready to go, back in shape, no issues, no problems, no concerns. But a media member asked about the weight gain to a coach who implied that Leonard Fournette was up over 260 pounds.
Well, around 260, yeah. Close to 260, I thought it was.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. The question was he over 250? And the coach said higher, something like that. But Leonard Fournette, he's been on Instagram posting videos of his workouts, and he took to Twitter with a comment saying, quote, "They wouldn't have the same energy in your face, so why entertain them? See you September 11th," end quote. September 11th, of course, being week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. So, Evan, your thoughts on Lenny kind of, snapping back a little bit?
I mean, we're going to see him this time next week. So a little bit earlier than September 11th. First, let me say this. Tons of people out there, 1,000% Twitter fingers versus saying anything to your face. One of the lessons I learned earlier in my career, not that I'm perfect in everything that I've said, and I think I've definitely pushed limits on takes and things you wouldn't necessarily say to their face, but you can never say anything that you wouldn't be able to address to the player directly. That, I think, is crossing the line when you're a member of the media
Sure.
and taking it a bit too far. So I will say, Rick Stroud of the Times, who kind of revealed this in a podcast of his own, he simply just put out the information. So, Leonard Fournette has been getting a lot of crap for this little throwaway comment. But the fact of the matter is everyone is focusing on the clickbait headline of this all versus the reality, which is what you're talking about, which is he's fine now. But based on everything we've heard and seen, this was a mandatory minicamp issue, something that obviously might have been scaled down in front of the media. I think Lenny told us he was at like 245 when we spoke with him during that time. Todd Bowles mentioned how, he wasn't where he was supposed to be, but a lot of players aren't, and he wasn't too worried about that. Wouldn't be like, a first in professional athletes to say one thing to the media, which is different behind closed doors. But, this whole lasagna Lenny, leftover Lenny thing that's going on right now is a little bit more of just off-season boredom versus what's going to actually happen when Lenny steps on the field next week for training camp and what we see on September 11th. if anything, it actually makes the chip on his shoulder a little bit bigger and gets him pissed off, which, you know what, if that's what's to come of this all, fans should sign up for that. Yeah, right? I mean, like, whatever's going to get you motivated, let me throw it into the cauldron and let's let it cook, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I had a buddy send me an article link today about how the Buccaneers are not happy about Leonard Fournette's weight gain. And I'm like, dude, this was like 2 months ago. Like, he's pretty much back in shape. There's a video of him deadlifting like 325 pounds from last week. Like, this is a non-story. And I was really honestly kind of surprised that it all came back up again. It just seemed to come out of nowhere. And like you said, it all comes from this like little throwaway line on Stroud's podcast. Good Day Tampa Bay, I think is the name of it.
It was a nothing burger. It was a small comment in a greater conversation. And again, it has no reflection on where we are today versus where we are then. It's again headline-y, clickbaity, and just people throwing jabs at the guy because, you know, it's what we like to do on social media. Not me and you personally, we as a society.
Right. There's only so many times you can talk about whether or not Tom Brady was going to play for the Dolphins, whether or not Rob Gronkowski is coming out of retirement, or
it's Camille. His girlfriend stirred that one up. I don't think that was clickbaity. I stand by that. His girlfriend could have said he's retired, but no, like she's just like, I don't think he's retired. Like, why? She stirred the pot more. So,
yeah. I mean, and David,
this goes back to our pod 2 weeks ago.
Well, and David talked about it yesterday. You know, he even had the graphic of Camille's quote up there, and I'm just like, can we stop? Let's go back to talking about trading for Jimmy Garoppolo at this point. Like, enough. Wait, if he's going to come out.
They haven't used the money yet. They haven't used the money yet. I'm just poke the bear.
I can't wait until Cade Otton unveils his number 87 jersey and we can all move on.
Yeah.
So with that, coming up in just a moment, Evan is going to have his defensive players to watch in training camp. But first, BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen every day. David and I have been listing our 3 players to watch at each position ahead of training camp. We are going to wrap that up on Friday's episode. I apologize to everyone for missing yesterday's episode. Yesterday was pretty much as bad as you could possibly get for me, and David stepped up and took care of that. So we are going to wrap up our defensive preview on Friday. But Evan, as we said last week, does not have the time nor the patience to deal with me to go through every single position. So we're looking at his 4 defensive players to watch in training camp. And for a quick refresher, I do recommend you go back, you listen to last Wednesday's episode when he listed his offensive players. But to recap, it was Cade Otton, Rachaad White, Russell Gage, and Luke Gadecki. Those were Evan's 4 offensive players to watch. So Evan, let's kick things off with your #1 defensive player to watch coming up here in training camp.
Assuming he's signed, right? We have to do Logan Hall. And I know it's a cop-out to go with the draft picks, similar to Cade Otton, what I'm doing with Logan Hall. But I'm sorry, they are the needs of this team. Tight end is a monstrous need. And right now, the defensive interior is a huge need. And I'm very curious to see how this quick, twitchy, slimmer kind of build works in this defense and how he's going to step into an important role there alongside guys like Akeem Nicks and Vita Vea. So I really think that this defense needs more pressure on the quarterback. That is something when you look back at the tape and when we dissect last season, I felt like they got burned on a lot of third and longs because they were not generating enough pressure on the QB. So it is tough for anyone here or fans to argue that Logan Hall isn't somebody you're circling around and we're going to have cameras pointed at a good chunk of the time because he's new, he's shiny, just like last year with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, right? I mean, we got to see him. We fell in love with him a little bit. His impact was there. I think he probably had a little bit more left in the tank last year, and he would admit that, than I think what he produced. But we saw a lot of promise. I think Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is going to take a tremendous step here in year 2. I'm going to be watching him, but going. I remember stepping onto the training camp field for the first time last year and having Simeon Rice next to me, and him just being like blown away by how this kid looked physically. It's like, damn, this kid just got out of college. Holy smokes, he is built like a unit. So when we get to season previews, we can maybe talk about Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. I kind of understand what we're going to get out of him. But Logan Hall certainly won. I'm going to kind of split this one in a bit of a cop-out. If I had to choose one person, though, KJ Britt is somebody I'm going to be watching a lot. Cam Gill is also a part of that list as well. But if I had to go one person here, KJ Britt. Just every time, and it's been so many for me to point out during these off-season interviews or little comments that have popped up in interviews, even dating back to last year from practices and when Levante went down. A lot of players and coaches have talked highly of KJ Britt. I believe a 5th rounder from last year and what he's been able to do and stepping in. And I think that he's going to have more of a presence this year. We saw last year the amount of injuries on the defensive side of the ball. I think he can find a role more than a special teams guy. So I think, Grant Stewart is a special teams guru, right? I'm not expecting him to really do anything as a linebacker for the Buccaneers. He's just going to do his job and do it well. But I think KJ Britt might be able to break away from that special teams role specifically and find an impact on the field as a linebacker. It might not be this year in like full go, but we might see little spurts of promise into building with him in the future, the next couple of years, and sticking around a while with Tampa Bay. As I go through my list here of what I wrote down. You want to say something on the first two?
Yeah, to go back to your first one, I had mentioned Logan Hall was my number one player to watch. It's certainly not a cop-out whatsoever because we need to see who this guy is. And with the way that the defensive line has really completely changed, you do still have Will Golston there, but Ndamukong Suh's gone. You're bringing in Logan Hall. You brought in Akeem Hicks. You've heard Warren Sapp heap praise on Logan Hall already. And so his play is going to be vital. So you want to see him get off to that hot start. You want to see him really competing with everybody else on the field and get that reaction like you mentioned with Simeon, where it's like, I can't believe this kid is fresh out of college. He already looks like a seasoned pro. KJ Britt, he's been one of David's guys for a long time. Big fan of Britt, and he's going to be important too. You take a look at the depth at linebacker, and it's so vital. And we saw injuries plaguing the linebacker position. We saw Levante David miss time. We've seen Devin White miss time. You have to have somebody there that can fill in. And with the ceiling that I think KJ Britt has, he has the potential to be a starter in the NFL. Is he going to start over Devin or Levante? No, because they're Devin and Levante, but he's a starting caliber linebacker. So it'll be interesting to see the way he takes on that role because, he's in his his third of 4 years of his rookie deal. So, he could be walking sooner than later if if other teams start to really.
Levante David is in the last year of his contract.
There is that.
That's a storyline we'll have for a later date, but we do have to. We do have to wonder if it is his last go around in a Buccaneers uniform.
Oh, David messaged me today. Well, we have an NFC South Locked On group chat. We were talking about the Panthers' new uniforms, and David sent a screenshot that Levante had liked it on Instagram and said Levante David signing with the Panthers next year. And oof, I would be very angry. Those uniforms really aren't even all that good. I don't like matte helmets though, so I'm going to be biased.
I like the uniforms. I'll say I like it, but as I said, we'll have plenty of time to break down, that transition. Especially, if Brady doesn't come back, maybe you get rid of Levante, you get your money in order, and just stink it up again in the short term. We got a great year coming. We're not going to worry about that. You kick the can down the road. We're going to ride it off with Jason Light, just kicking that can. We'll kick the can.
Yeah, there is that, of course, we're not going to get into it. You're not baiting me into this. I'm
baiting. Oh, it's already baited.
All right. Well, we are going to hear who else Evan is watching for in training camp coming up in just a moment. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Wednesday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. All right, Evan, we've got Logan Hall. We've got KJ Britt / Cam Gill. Since you can't do all the positions, then I'll let you do a 2A, 2B on that one. But who is your next defensive player that you're really keeping an eye on at training camp?
Keanu Neal. I want to see
that a lot.
It's a position of need for the Buccaneers. I think they've done a great job kind of building that depth. They also bring in a guy like Logan Ryan, but Keanu Neal is somebody that I really want to watch because the Cowboys moved him from his natural position last year, and now he, at least from what he told us when he signed, was part of the allure was A, getting moved back to his original position, which is what he likes to play, and B, also working with a guru in Todd Bowles and seeing him hand in hand. Are we going to be able to see sort of what we all fell in love with Keanu from, not Buccaneers fans, certainly playing against him during the beginning of his career, but what really made him so electric early in his career. And I want to see how we might not have these answers right away, of course, in the beginning of training camp, but I'm going to have my eye on how he looks, where they put him, what is he doing, how is he integrating, how are they integrating all the secondary pieces. So, we obviously know like Carlton Davis and, Sean Murphy-Bunting, their roles, but I think Todd Bowles can get very creative with what he's going to do, and I'm going to be taking an extra look at him. Obviously, a fairly local product as well, so he'll be important for us to kind of keep tabs on. But I'm really excited about that offseason signing.
Yeah, it was definitely a really good one. Now, looking at the signing of Keanu Neal, let's kind of rewind the clock a little bit, and we've gained some listeners and people kind of tune out sometimes in the offseason. You take a look at the addition of Keanu Neal, the addition of Logan Ryan to go with Mike Edwards and Antoine Winfield Jr. We know Antoine Winfield is locked and loaded. So what kind of role do you foresee looking ahead for Keanu Neal, for Logan Ryan in this defense?
Well, that's the cool part about it is I'm not 100% sure, and I think Todd Bowles has a lot of versatility here to what he can do and deploying all of these guys. He might have Antoine, Logan, Keanu at once. That's what I'm so interested about, is because they've built up all this depth. I don't think it's a necessary. I don't think it's a given that Mike Edwards is going to be playing a ton of snaps. He's going to be on the field for sure. He was certainly on the field one of the most pivotal times last year during one of the worst times for a fan last year on that Dan Cooper Cup catch. But I think with Logan Ryan and Keanu Neal, you kind of have some options on the table. And I will have a better answer for you midway through training camp. But that's what kind of gets me going, is because I think Todd Bowles is an exceptional coach who not only – see, there are some coaches out there who have their scheme. This is how we do it, and this is how you're going to run it. And I don't care what my personnel is. This is what I know, and this is what we're going to do. And that's sort of it's lazy to an extent, and it works if you have the horses. It doesn't if you don't. Todd is somebody who is able to build a defense around what he's got in the arsenal. And you saw that last year when the team was hobbled with injuries. I mean, how they stayed afloat, it was an unbelievable job from the coaching staff and the players who were stepping up in those positions. But Todd is going to have a couple of quirks up his sleeve, and that is, and I know I can't really say that that's a player that I'm looking forward to seeing, but that's why I like Keanu Neal, because I think his role is a little bit more undefined, and we don't necessarily know where Bowles is going to put him in and deploy him against offenses.
Yeah, I mean, as Todd Bowles said when he came in, my system is my players. And I've always loved that quote, because like you said, there's so many coaches that try to force the square peg into the round hole and things of that nature. And Todd Bowles has adapted so well, no matter what his personnel is, in order to get his defenses to work. So, Evan, your last player that you're really keeping an eye on at training camp on the defensive side of the ball is?
This one's probably going to come as a little bit of surprise, but it's Anthony Nelson. He's a guy who had 5 sacks last year, and a dude who has shown steady improvement each and every year. He doesn't get the most snaps, but he was a guy for me last year that I felt his presence. And when I looked at the snap numbers, I was like, oh man, he wasn't out on the field that much at all. And as I'm trying to build an angle around him, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like when he gets out there, it is a quality over quantity sort of deal. Something that William Golson says all the time is right. Don't count the snaps, make the snaps count. And I think Anthony Nelson is a dude who might push for more playing time than you would think at this juncture. And I have high hopes for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, but I would not be surprised if Nelson competes for PT on, pivotal downs, because I think he has tremendous potential to get after the quarterback. And, he's probably going to be one of my hopefully he has a healthy training camp and all this. But, I can see 8 sacks from him this upcoming year. He's a sleeper for me on this team. So that's a personal preference of mine. Everybody else was key position, need to know how they're going to fit, because that's important, and the team lost something there, to a degree. He is just someone that I'm a fan of. I love watching him. And so as far as people who I'm going to watch, I'm going to gravitate towards him and see if, we can run this back in December and be like, you were onto something, or you're a dummy, which is the latter comes up a lot more than the former.
But it makes the former feel that much better when someone finally does say it. You take a look, and I love this pick by you, because I do think Anthony Nelson's going to play a vital role on this defense. You're looking at now no Jason Pierre-Paul.
Yep.
And even with JPP, when he was on the field opposite Shaq Barrett, you still saw plenty of snaps out of Tryon-Shoyinka. So now you're looking at Anthony Nelson to almost fill that Tryon-Shoyinka role, where he's going to get an increase in snaps because he's going to be that spell guy. Shaq needs a breather, JTS needs a breather, Anthony Nelson's going to be the one on the field, and he absolutely does make an impact when he's out there. I know David isn't huge on Anthony Nelson. He's not super sold on him. So I think it'll be important. I think David is going to gravitate towards watching him a little bit to see, if he can start to formulate a different opinion about him. And I think the more opportunity that Nelson is going to get, like you said, he wasn't out there much, but when he was out there, you felt his impact. Now they're going to be able to find a way to get him on the field a little bit more in that rotation. And I think he could be looking at a pretty solid year. I'm not going to go 8 sacks, but I think he could have a pretty solid year and be an impactful player on the defense, especially in, while still a limited role, a larger role than we're used to seeing him in.
That's right. And 8's a tall number. But as I said, if I'm going to go all in on a sleeper, all in on a surprise sort of pick, when we eventually have that episode leading into the season, Anthony Nelson is going to be that guy. I like to zig when other people zag, and everybody's going to be on the Joe Tryon-Shoyinka train, rightfully so. I love him too. But usually when there's a full steam ahead going in one direction, that always is a little bit of a pause for concern. I feel like maybe expectations are a bit high for him out of the gates. Meanwhile, Nelson has an extra year under his belt. He's been on that steady trajectory, and keep an eye on him.
All right. Well, of course, we have training camp right around the corner. So quick recap. Evan's players to watch on each side of the ball. You got Cade Otton, Rachaad White, Russell Gage, Luke Gedeke. And then on defense, Logan Hall, KJ Britt / Cam Gill, Keanu Neal, and Anthony Nelson. And something that Evan is finding out for the very first time right this moment, but I'm giving him plenty of time to prep, is on next Wednesday's episode, we are going to get Evan Klosky's pre-training camp 53-man roster project. David and I will have ours on Monday, so we're going to see what the similarities, what the differences are between the three of us coming up after Evan gives his next Wednesday. So with that, last question that I'll ask you, similar to last week, of these 4-5 guys that you named on the defensive side of the ball that you're really keeping an eye on, who do you feel is the most important / impactful player for the Buccaneers this season?
I will go with Keanu Neal.
Okay.
Which, I know I talked to Anthony Nelson, but I'll play it a little bit safer. And with the amount of versatility he brings, I don't know what his stats are going to look like. It's more so how he's going to be able to plug holes and do a bunch of different things. And if there's an injury, he steps in. I just think that if everything goes according to plan, I think you'll say we're happy to have that guy. And he was a necessary part of this Super Bowl run, we'll say.
Find someone that loves you the way Todd Bowles loves collecting safeties. I probably seen Logan Hall a little bit, just given how he's going to kind of be thrust into that role, but absolutely understand Keanu Neal. The safety position is going to be a real interesting one to watch moving forward. So with that, Evan, we are going to get out of here. We'd like to thank everyone for making Locked On Bucs your first listen every day. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Podcast, our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league, because an offseason does not mean a break in action. David will be back tomorrow, hopefully, with a special guest that we have been trying to get on for a few weeks, keep running into scheduling conflicts, but hopefully he will be on with a special guest tomorrow. And then we'll be back on Friday to finish our positional training camp previews. If you want to contribute to the show, ask a question, give an opinion, a hot take, anything at all, of course, you can email us at LockedOn.
The spicier, the better.
That's right. It is spicy season. You go ahead and email LockedOnBucsPodcast@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 813-444-5841. Check out everything that Evan is doing over on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. Check out my written work over at bucksnation.com and follow along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at eCloskey WTSP. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. We thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.